Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late-night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Welcome to the Thursday night edition of the program. Man, the week is flying by. Happy to be here with you. Our phone number, if you want to join us, we're live and national. Give us a call, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. And after the little fiasco that we saw, the interruption at the State of the Union, Congressman Al Green was censured today, and he gave some remarks regarding that. Listen to this.
And still I rise, a proud, liberated Democrat, unbought, unbossed, and unafraid. And I rise today, Mr. Speaker, to call to the attention of the House, this place that I revere, and notwithstanding recent events that I have great respect for.
Well, they go on to bust out into song with the members of the House singing, those in support of Congressman Green, "We Shall Overcome." Listen to this.
And that Representative Al Green be censured with public reading of this resolution by the Speaker. The House had come to order. The House had come to order. The House to come to order. Clear the well, please. Clear the well. The House has to continue its business.
All right, and there you go. That's Speaker Johnson trying to rein in the crowd from singing. I guess you can't censor all of them, right? Censure, excuse me. All of them for singing, and it is what it is, right? He did the crime. He's got to do the time. Anyway, and I say that figuratively. I want to continue to talk about what's going on in Washington. And today, you may have heard by now, but the United States is now negotiating directly with Hamas. President Trump speaking with reporters earlier, explaining exactly what's going on. Listen to this.
Mr. President, your envoy, Steve Witkoff, told us a little while ago that if Hamas does not release hostages, that the U.S. and Israel could take some action. What does that mean in your eyes? Is that military action? Would you join strikes with Israel?
Well, you're going to find out. I had the honor of spending a lot of time yesterday with quite a few of the people that we got out, and I can't believe how badly treated they were, really badly treated. Stories that you wouldn't even believe. Some of it was documented. Some of it was so bad you couldn't really, I don't think you can put it on. And it's a shame. And they said one thing, they have 59 hostages, of which many of them are killed. They want to know if we could just continue. They said without us, look, Biden wasn't able to get anybody out. We came along and they started releasing. But we have 59 left, of which 24 are living. The rest are dead. And I put out a statement. It's sort of self-explanatory, I think. But somebody's going to have to get a lot rougher than they're getting.
So President Trump working on multiple things, obviously negotiating with Hamas yesterday, putting out that statement that there will be hell to pay. It will be over for you if they don't release the hostages. All of that coming after meeting with the families and the hostages in the White House. And, you know, nothing like meeting people and hearing a story. And I'm pretty sure that's what motivated him to take this tough position that he's taken. And he basically said, and you've heard it, and I'll repeat it, that he will give the Israelis whatever they need to finish the job if they don't get the hostages back. And I guess it's pretty clear, right? Now, I don't think we should take this lightly. Why? Because Trump is not a pro-war kind of guy. He's not me, right? I never met a war I didn't like. But Trump is exactly opposite, right? He's not a war hawk. And for him to take this position, and again, he's not getting the United States involved per se. He's going to say, hey, I'm going to let Netanyahu run roughshod on you guys. But it says a lot that to push him to that limit, to get him to this place where he's, willing to go for broke. And I think sometimes that's the only way that you can negotiate with terrorists, in my opinion. So we continue. Now, listen to this. 75% approval rating on Trump's primetime address. Who would have thunk it? Let's see, who's this coming from? CBS poll. The speech received a 75% approval rating, a mandate like we have not seen in the United States. I'm reading from the Blaze here. Let's see what else we've got here. A couple of standout moments. Number one, allowing the Democrats' behavior to speak for itself. And I think that's appropriate. I think that's accurate, too. It's clear that the American people are seeing what's going on. And as people are not blind and people are not stupid, they see what's happening. Even the people that don't like Trump are saying, listen, Trump's saying stuff that I'm thinking. And, he might be orange man bad like I have been told to believe. But at some point, I agree with orange man bad, right? And I think that's what's happening here. A lot of people are saying, look, I don't think that we should be sending money overseas to other countries to help them with their transitional programs, with transgenders in opera, with, what was the crazy one that was blown up? A huge story. The prophylactics, right? The prophylactics for Gaza. This is a big thing, right? It's just so crazy, right? It's just a crazy thing. And I think this is, people see this and they say, what is going on here? Hold on a second, right? It's one thing to do all these wonderful things that we think the government does. And then all of a sudden we say, hold on, the government doesn't do anything. Now we're doing these quote unquote wonderful things all over the place. And at my cost, right? Not at their cost, because they don't make anything. They don't produce anything, so they don't earn any money. They just take our money. And this is where it becomes problematic. And when they do produce money, it's not that they earned it. They've printed it, which becomes a problem for me, too, with inflation. So I think more and more Americans have decided to pay more and more attention. And as they do, they see exactly what the Democrats are doing. Then you've got the corruption. It just exposes itself here, right? It's that simple. And the biggest moment for me, and again, we talked about that, but this highlights a few moments, and I agree with the moments that it's highlighting in this piece in The Blaze by Liz Wheeler. Ultimately, the little boy, DJ, the young man, being named an honorary Secret Service agent, and the Democrats staying lockstep with whatever plan they had to not give him a standing ovation and not, really give him, in my opinion, the respect that he was due. That really, I think, sent a message to everyone. Everyone. I can't think of a blue-collar Democrat, pro-life, liberal-leaning person that I might know. And I know plenty. Remember, grew up in Brooklyn, live in Jersey. I'm surrounded by them. I can't think of a single one of them that would think that that's okay. That's dissing this little kid was the right thing to do. That's why Trump did so well. He did the job. He got it done. He nailed it. And those people are just, they're giving him a layup here. They really are. Anyway, folks, we continue straight ahead. You got some congressmen out there saying that Trump is ceding power to Elon Musk. The same old story. It's like every other day they put that story out. And Trump setting the record straight, saying, hold on a second. I'm in charge here. I put these people in charge of these agencies. and they run these agencies. Musk is our guy, the head of the DOGE committee, the chair of DOGE, but he's not the vice president. He's not the president. He's working on behalf of the team and setting that record straight. So we're going to get some thoughts and analysis on that. Plus, your calls are coming up after that. 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Well, thank you, Rich, and thank you for everything. I know you very well, and I listen, but I have a lot of people that listen, and they love your show, and I appreciate it very much.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
And it has been shocking to me how Republicans in Congress have just handed over all of their own congressional authority to Elon Musk. Elon Musk is not rooting out waste, fraud, and abuse. He can't possibly know that it's waste, fraud, and abuse. And in fact, the representations of what he's cutting are false on his so-called transparent wall of receipts. What he's doing is a massive corruption scheme where he's cutting other government contracts while he is getting $13 billion. This is for Elon Musk's own benefit, and the congressional Republicans have basically given all of their own power of the purse, to Elon Musk. And it is about time that they stand up. But I'll tell you something, Wolf, I will believe it when I see it. I'm sure they can pay lip service to it, but let's see them actually go to the floor and put some legislation down that will curtail and put guardrails on Elon Musk.
That's Congressman Dan Goldman. You probably remember him and Adam Schiff really kind of tag teaming the impeachment of President Trump. And I'm no fan of Dan Goldman's, and I think he's off his rocker in making this statement. But I want to bring in a guest to give us a little insight on this, because President Trump had a cabinet meeting today, and we got a little clip from him coming up. Jenn Kelly, formerly Jennifer Kearns, one of our favorites on this program, is joining us. And you guys know that she is the host of All American Radio on 790 AM at KABC Radio in Los Angeles. She's the author of The Real War on Women and former press secretary for the Republican Party in California. Jen, welcome back.
Hey, Rich. Great to be with you.
Likewise. So now let's talk a little bit about this. Dan Goldman, he's out here like all the Democrats. It's like today's his turn to say that Musk is the shadow president. He's in charge of everything, yada, 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 yada. Meanwhile, Trump had a cabinet meeting today, and he basically said, look, it's you all, the cabinet, that are in charge. Musk is going to make recommendations, and we're going to take it that way. Listen to this clip.
I want the cabinet members to keep good people. I don't want to see a big cut where a lot of good people are cut. I want the cabinet members to keep the good people, and the people that aren't doing a good job, that are unreliable, don't show up to work, etc., those people can be cut. So I had a meeting, and I said, I want the cabinet members, go first, keep all the people you want, everybody that you need. And it would be better if they were there for 2 years instead of 2 weeks, because in 2 years they'll know the people better. But I want them to do the best job they can. When we have good people, that's precious. That's very important. And we want them to keep the good people. And so we're going to be watching them. And Elon and the group are going to be watching them. And if they can cut, it's better. And if they don't cut, then Elon will do the cutting.
So, Jen, what is going on here? Because the media will have you believe that it's not Trump that's in charge. It's Musk that's in charge. And that they're just cutting, and somehow putting the money in their own pockets.
Well, Rich, this reminds me a lot, if you remember back in the early 2000s, going into 2004 and the reelection of Bush Cheney, remember the left said the same thing of Dick Cheney, that he was really serving as the president. He was really the one making all the decisions behind the scenes, and that he was still profiting from his former corporation, even when he was the vice president, and Halliburton, and that actually turned out not to be the case. We also know, from George W. Bush's memoirs and things like that, that he was actually the decider. He said, no, I was fully in charge the entire time. So, the left loves to do this thing where it's like this sort of deflection of, the guy that you think is in charge is not really in charge. Well, guess what? Whenever the Democrats are pointing their finger at you, there's 4 more pointing back at them, because that is exactly what was happening in the Biden administration, right? We didn't really have a president that was, at the helm, physically fit, mentally fit to be at the White House. There were many other people doing the job of the president. And in fact, I think we could probably name a few politicians that were actually doing the job of the president. This is funny. And the selling out of the office that they claim to be doing, Rich, is something that they themselves did in the last administration.
I think you're right there. And it blows me away how so many people buy into this. And I don't know, maybe it's my own naivete, Jen, but I feel like, the left really is, in my opinion, I feel like they're running out of some steam here. Like all they've got is the ability to kind of yell a little bit more. They yelled at Trump so much it didn't work. They're like, all right, leave Trump alone. It's fine. Let's yell at Musk now. And then they just need somebody to yell at, and it doesn't seem to be working. I don't know. Am I onto something?
You are onto something. Look, Rich, it's very clear to me, and I say this because I've been at the upper levels of a party, a political party, where you had to come up with strategy and do postmortems on elections and figure out a path forward. And it is very clear to me, Rich, that the Democrat Party has not done that. Part of the reason they haven't done a postmortem from the 2024 election is because they don't really have anyone that is a leader of the party. Even Nancy Pelosi, who is called the de facto leader of the party, she had a terrible accident over the holidays, and so she hasn't really been able to be at the helm because, well, let's see, most of the leaders of the Democrat Party belong in nursing homes. But that aside, they really haven't done any inner gazing into their navels and sat down and really talked about the path forward. And look, I think they're going to have a really rough time going into the midterms. All they have is this sort of, kook protest thing, which we saw the other night at the joint address to Congress. And they don't really have a plan. They just have these hateful things that they're going to call Elon Musk. And on the flip side of this, the American people are actually liking what Elon Musk is doing. About 83% of people are liking what Elon Musk is doing. Compare that to 53% of Americans, Rich, who say they like what Trump is doing. And Trump is letting this, I'm very proud of Trump, even as a bombastic, New York City developer, a CEO, founder of companies, founders of brands. He is letting Elon take some of the shine. And he's also, as our good friend Andrew Breitbart used to say, he's also letting Elon Musk be out there like the rodeo clown. And what Andrew Breitbart used to say is, make no mistake, the rodeo clown has paint on his face. He's gesticulating around in the ring, but he's also the most talented guy in the ring, the most seasoned veteran in the ring, because he's the guy that's going to get the bull with the horns off of the professional riders. And so Trump and Elon, I think, have this sort of tacit pact where they're working together, and Trump is coming out like the dignitary.
Yeah, really good point. Great analogy. Folks, Jennifer Kelly, a.k.a. used to be Jennifer Kearns, she's coming right back with us. We're going to talk about a lot of things, including why people don't trust the media. New poll on that coming up. Keep it locked right here. I'm Rich Valdez.
Best guests, the best opinions. This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Well, it is a mandate, and I'm going to explain why. And I don't mind the question, but let me be very clear. I'm no supporter of Trump. I'm a supporter of truth and the facts. And here's the facts. The man won every swing state. He increased in terms of his voter turnout in his favor from the standpoint of blacks, Latinos, and young voters. He increased his numbers in that regard from 2020. 89% of the counties shifted to the right. That's a mandate. We can sit up there and play around all we want to. In 2020, Trump didn't win the popular vote. He didn't win the electoral college vote. A matter of fact, the Republicans hadn't won the popular vote, if I remember correctly, since 2004. But they did this year. So 20 years after they last won a popular vote, they won the popular vote. They won the electoral college vote. The man won every swing state. And on top of it all, 89% of the counties shifted gears. I don't understand how people can look at that and say, there's no mandate.
That, of course, is I'm going to use the word legendary, sportscaster Stephen A. Smith. We've had him on this program, had some really good conversation with him. Sometimes I agree with him, sometimes I don't, but I think he usually gives you an unvarnished view of what he thinks. And on this particular point, I think he's right. I think the American people spoke loud and clear. I think that kind of reinforces what I was talking about in the opening of the show. And it probably explains why this Gallup poll that came out saying that people don't trust the media is where it is. I want to bring our guest back in. Jennifer Kelly, formerly Jennifer Kearns, is with us. She is the author of The Real War on Women. She's the host of All American Radio on KABC in L.A., and she's with us live right now. Jen, what do you think of Stephen A. Smith's comments and this new poll?
Well, he's exactly right. 68% of the American people supported Trump's transition, and they loved his cabinet picks specifically. So anyone trying to say, they don't like Elon Musk or they don't like Tulsi Gabbard or they wouldn't support Kash Patel, all of that really went out the window because the support of Trump and his agenda and his cabinet picks is nearly 70%. And that is just remarkable. Another group that I've been so impressed with, a new poll came out yesterday showing about 60% of Generation Z and anyone up to the age of 29 also supports what Trump is doing in his first 100 days. I mean, that is epic, Rich. If you remember last summer, you and I were talking about how 65% of Gen Z said they were considering socialism as a better government structure than democracy, and that was part and parcel because of AOC and the squad. So that is quite a turnaround. I think also it has a lot to do with the energy, with the youth of the people that Trump is appointing. I mean, this has got to be one of the youngest cabinets in American history. And although she's not a cabinet member, you have the White House press secretary, Caroline Leavitt, also the youngest female press secretary ever to serve. And again, you look at Pam Bondi, Kash Patel, all of these people are relatively young in terms of, comparing them to people like Donald Rumsfeld and other cabinet members of the Democrats. And they all have young children. They're bringing their kids to work. And this is just a phenomenal trend in the polling. And I think it will continue. And I think Trump is holding the right path. He's being the CEO, as you played in the last segment. He's letting his cabinet members use their expertise and their leadership skills to get the job done.
Jenn Kelly, there is this poll that you were referring to before about trust in media. And I think that has a lot to do with people. People are seeing that Trump is, for better or worse, that the media is telling them, he seems to make sense for them because they feel like he does. Talk to us about this poll and how low the trust in the media is.
Well, this is really interesting. The Gallup poll is really the gold standard in polling, and I've looked at polling for the last, 21 years. The Gallup poll never really goes to the left or right. It just measures, the sentiment of the American people. It measures, trustworthiness across brands, Coca-Cola, McDonald's, you name it. But it also is measuring the trust in the media, and they've been doing this for the better part of 5 decades. And the new Gallup poll that came out yesterday shows that the trust in the American media is the lowest it's ever been since they started doing the poll 55 years ago. And in fact, it was so bad for the mainstream media, Rich, that 66% of Americans now say they have no trust or very little trust in the American media. And that is a huge reckoning. You look at the reckoning also that's taking place in some of the newsrooms. Yesterday, I heard from someone who is a producer at ABC News. She texted me and said, "Are you hiring?" And I said, well, what's going on? She said half of the unit she's in just got laid off. Same thing with MSNBC last week. And this is a reckoning that's going from the Gallup poll, and it's jumping off the page and really going into the real life newsrooms, because these news organizations have been so biased that they are now to the point where they are actually not reporting things accurately, and people are starting to turn the channel. And when they turn the channel, their ratings go down. And when the ratings go down, their investors say, hey, what's happening here? And they have to trim the budget. And that's coming in the form of the liberal biased journalists, 94% of whom answered in a poll a couple of years ago that they had voted for Barack Obama. They were firmly in the tank for Barack Obama and against somebody like Donald Trump. So there's a real big shift in media coming. It's starting. This is just the first step of many. And I think it's a great thing. I think freedom of the press and free choice is just such a great thing.
Yeah, amen to that. Now, Jenn, let everybody know how they can find you, get a copy of your amazing book, and keep up to speed with the work that you're doing.
They can go to allamericanradio.com anytime to find out where to listen to the show in New York City, New Jersey, Virginia, Delaware, Maryland. And to get the book, they can go to therealwaronbiden.com.
Outstanding. Folks, she's amazing. Make sure you check out what she's doing. And check her out on Newsmax. She'll be on this weekend. I believe you're on the Wendy Bell show, as I understand it.
Yeah, it was great seeing you. It's like, there's my amigo.
Always good to see you, Jenn. Thank you for being with us tonight. Thanks for your expert analysis, and good luck with everything. I'll talk to you real soon.
You too. Thanks, Rich.
You bet. All right, amigos, we continue with your calls and more coming up straight ahead. 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
After the guest leaves every night and we're doing open phones, kind of at the heartbeat of America, and you sit there in this radio studio and suddenly you hear voices. Mobile, Dallas, New York, Miami. And there's kind of a conglomeration of America all in one room.
Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
All right, amigos, welcome back. Into the phones we go to get your thoughts and opinions on everything that's going on in America at night. 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. Let's go to Mike in Washington, D.C., calling us from WMAL. Mike, go right ahead.
Oh, yes, I'm enjoying your show so far.
Thank you.
But the one thing that I wish that conservative radio do is let its listening audience talk to the guests. Because your guest that you have on your show, that she was good. I agree with a lot of things she said, but the one thing I'm a little bit worried about is the midterm elections. Because there's a lot of anger out there in the streets right now with all these cuts going on. And when you take somebody's livelihood away from them and you telling them, hey, stick it in there, don't worry, you'll get another job, that's not what people are thinking about. And I feel that same anger that I saw in the presidential election when people voted for Trump because the Democrats went too far to the left, I'm seeing that same kind of anger with a lot of Republicans right now and independents I know. And someone personally told me that they was going to vote blue during the midterm elections. So I wouldn't be so complacent if I was the Republicans, and they better do a better job, really articulating, the cuts that they're making. Because, again, when you take somebody's livelihood away, they don't want to hear that. Take it for the team. Take it for the team. That's not going to work when people's livelihood.
I think you're right, and I think there's no winning that. Right there's no way that you're going to fire 2 million people from the federal government, and they're going to be like, well, he was just trying to do the right thing. My inbox is filled with that as well. People telling me, look, I voted for Trump. I love Trump. I've been a Republican my whole life, but he's coming after the Department of Education. He's coming after this. And my answer to them is, why'd you stick around so long? You're part of the problem too. And I've always had that opinion. I worked in government and was trying to work myself out of a job. I don't think that we should have so many people making their livelihood based on government service. I'm pretty sure those in government service disagree with me, but that's my personal opinion. So, yeah, you're right. Now, do I think there's enough government workers out there that will turn their back on Trump that are going to counter the momentum of the MAGA movement, of people that are saying, you know what, enough is enough. I've had enough. We're spending too much on foreign aid. We're spending too much on wars. We're spending too much here and there. I don't think so. I think that even if they got them all together, if the Democrats or anybody else, even a dissenting Republican like Chris Christie, right? Let's say Chris Christie and Liz Cheney said, hey, we are Republicans that are against Trump, and we're going to rent the Capitol Arena in D.C., and we're going to have a rally. I don't think they could fill it up. I really don't. I just don't think there's enough support. Maybe in D.C. they might come close. But across the country, and guess what? Trump isn't winning D.C., right? there's nothing to be won there for him. So I think that there's always going to be pushback, especially when you're moving as quickly and as swiftly as he is. He's definitely ruffling feathers, and people are going to push back. And I think he knows full well that whatever needs to happen has to happen before the midterms, because results have to be posted. You got to put up some W's saying, all right, look, we got here 6 weeks ago, like he did last night or 2 nights ago, when we had the state of the joint session before Congress. He's got to be able to say, look, I got here and, I inherited a mess, and there was a lot of spending, and that puts us on a track for more inflation until we could rein it in. All that's true. But here's what we've done. We've done this, we've done this, we've done this, and we've done this. And I think the momentum that he has right now and how he's working, the way he's pretty much effectively ended the war in Gaza, something Biden couldn't do. And he was able to do it. And now, teetering on the brink of, totally annihilating Hamas if they don't give back the hostages. He's doing the work. He's doing the heavy lifting that needs to be done, making the tough choices. And with those tough choices come consequences. But I do believe that if he stays on the trajectory he's on, it's just going to be more winning. I think ultimately midterms will come around and there will be people saying, we don't like the fact that we lost our job. But there's going to be more people saying, we love the savings that this has caused for our country. We love the fact that we're now getting dividend checks on the money that we're saving. And Mike, listen to this. Imagine this. All those people that are upset or even sympathetic, like you, right? You're sympathetic to all of your friends that have lost their livelihood. And I understand that. But imagine how many people are going to be as true blue as you when they get that $5,000 check. Assuming they do. Let's just say they get one. I think a lot of people are going to be happy with that and say, you know what? Am I going to vote in favor of my friend who lost his government job? Or am I going to vote to maybe get another $5,000 check? And I think there's more people that would opt for that check, right? And for more savings and for Trump to continue the work. And I would say the work he was mandated to do by the American public, like Stephen A. Smith just played in the clip that we had. So I think ultimately that's where we end up with that, Mike.
Yes, everything that you said, I'm not disagreeing with you. But again, when you're playing around with people's livelihood, they're not going to want to hear. I mean, it's not like they don't like Trump. They love Trump. But again,
but they're still not going to vote for him. I agree.
When it comes to livelihood,
with you.
They're not going to want to hear that. I'm just telling you, I know that anger, the Republicans are making the same mistake the Democrats are making. There's a lot of anger out there in the streets right now. If you ignore that anger, then you're going to hand the midterm elections right over to the Democrats. And I hate to see that happen, but I'm telling you what I see in the streets right now.
Right. I think you see that because you're in Washington, D.C. I think if you were in other parts of the world, it'd be a little different. Look, I live in a big blue state. And there are people here, and listen, I'll go on the record saying this. It's going to be very unpopular. But people keep asking me. They're like, oh, man, New Jersey's having a gubernatorial election this year. We're the off-year state, us in Virginia. And man, it looks like we might get a Republican governor. And I got to tell you, I don't see that coming. I really don't. And, forgive me to all of the wonderful candidates that are running. I was just with someone the other day who's running for governor, and I've met with others, and I want them to win, but I just don't see it happening. I don't see it. I don't see it at all. Now, maybe I'm missing something. Maybe I need to be educated on something. But from where I sit, I don't see a Republican winning in New Jersey. I think they came close last time, but short of Trump has been very successful, and there's not a lot of really pro-Trump candidates running in New Jersey. There is one that is more pro-Trump than the others, but a lot of the Trump people are like, yeah, but he was very critical of Trump. And Trump loyalists are very loyal. So I don't know that they're going to be very enthused to get involved in a campaign like that. And that's, again, I could be totally wrong. But I think I'm totally right. And I was totally right the last time around. And I think I'm going to be totally right again. And I'm not rooting for that. I want to be wrong. But my point is, I agree with what you're saying. I think that there's a lot of momentum, especially in D.C., because that's where these people live, right? They don't like Trump. They're losing their jobs. I get it. But when you talk about these big states that have nice, big electoral college numbers, for the next presidential election, or even some of the states that, are going to be in play for the midterm elections, I think ultimately there's going to be way more wins that bring us closer to doing well by the American people and giving them a chance to vote for Trump than giving them a reason to vote against him. At least those are my thoughts. Anyway, I got to pause right here. Mike, thank you so much. Shout out to WMAL, Washington, D.C. in the building. Folks, coming right back. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Like there was a Key and Peele like that too. All right, amigos, welcome back. I'm here talking a lot of smack on the break here. Anyway, I want to get back to your calls, 833-4-VALDEZ. Let's go to Dan, Nashua, New Hampshire, streaming the show tonight. Go right ahead.
Yes, how you doing? Nice to talk to you.
Likewise. Thank you.
So I'm not too happy about Amy Coney Barrett voting with the liberal justices striking down the bid to cancel $2 billion on the USAID.
Yeah.
The thing to here is, I did some research into her. Her husband Jesse Barrett is a lawyer for Fox Corp and Cox Communications. Now, the problem I have with that is we know that Rupert Murdoch is a globalist and Paul Ryan runs Fox News, okay? And then you got the two dirty lobbyists and super PAC donors, Karl Rove and Ari Fleischer, who are lead contributors to Fox News. But they're also consultants to Cox Communications and Viacom, okay? Now, the other problem...
Look, I mean, there's a lot of dots you're connecting here. I can't call this one way or the other. I mean, yeah, there might be a lot of people we disagree with. That's just kind of how the cookie crumbles. I think she's shown herself to be who she is. She's an unreliable vote, and that's okay. Look, it is what it is. Hopefully, we can do a better job persuading her. Hopefully, she's not compromised. But, she seems to make these judgment calls every now and again that make you scratch your head and think, maybe we should have asked a few more questions during that time, the confirmation hearings. Anyway, thank you, Dan. I appreciate it. David, Paul, Daniel, stand by. We're coming back with more calls straight ahead. Don't go anywhere, folks. I am Rich Valdez.
Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Welcome to the program. It's Thursday night. We're live. We're national. Happy to be here. 833-482-5337 is our phone number, 833-4-VALDEZ. And President Trump pretty upset with the Democrats because of their pretty embarrassing behavior during his address to Congress, ripping them. Then you've got the Congressman Al Green. He gets censured today by the House of Representatives. Final vote was put out to take a vote, and that definitely happened. And Congressman Green was very, very contrite in many ways. He wasn't sorry about what he did, but he wanted to make sure everybody knew that he was not mad at Speaker Johnson. Speaker Johnson was just doing his job. Listen to this.
I am not in any way upset with the Speaker. I want people to know that the Speaker did what he was supposed to do. He did what he was supposed to do when we had the joint session of Congress. When I interrupted, the Speaker called it to my attention. He did it on multiple occasions. I have no reason in my heart to be upset with the Speaker.
So that, again, is Congressman Al Green on his getting censured by Congress today. Now, another big story coming out of the White House, of course, President Trump meeting with the families of the and some Hamas hostages, survivors, and having a very, I'm going to say, a very sincere, heartfelt message that he put on Truth Social. I read it to you last night. And again, just warning them, this is it. This is the line in the stand. Give back the hostages or there will be hell to pay. It will be over for you. These are the words he used. Very, very harsh language, because I think he's very, very serious. And the envoy to these negotiations, Steve Witkoff, gave some comments to the press earlier today. Listen to this.
Well, I would say that the president basically was saying, I don't want to put words in his mouth, but I think it's fairly clear he was saying, I've had enough. Like, there's a lot of mistreatment. There's a lot of conversation among these hostages about the deprivation that they went through, about murders that they saw. And I think that the president listened to it, absorbed it, and said, "This it's unacceptable. I'm not going to tolerate this type of behavior."
So what does that mean for phase 2 negotiations?
I don't think I don't think, as the president has said before, I don't think you alert everybody how you're going to negotiate or what your reaction's going to be. But I wouldn't test President Trump.
That, again, Steve Witkoff, the envoy to negotiations with Hamas. Of course, the president and the White House now dealing directly with Hamas to try and get this thing nipped in the bud. And President Trump, speaking with reporters today, was asked whether he plans to eliminate the Department of Education, and giving a response to that. Listen to this.
Mr. President, regarding the executive orders, there was talk that you might sign one winding down the Education Department.
Which department?
The Education Department. Are you having second thoughts on that?
No. I want to bring the schools. I want to bring the schools back to the states. And, I've said it 100 times. We're ranked at the bottom of the list, and yet we spend more. We're ranked number one for cost per student. We're ranked at the bottom of the list in education. And I know if I bring it back to Iowa, Indiana, Idaho, all these great states, I think I could say 40 states, I want to bring it back. 10 states won't be perfect. 5 states will be probably not so good. But they will be every bit as good as Norway and Denmark and Sweden and all of the states that are rated at the top. If you tell me about Indiana and some of these great states that run really well, Iowa, You tell me about those states, and if they run their own education, they're going to do a lot better than somebody sitting in Washington, D.C. that couldn't care less about the pupils out in the Midwest.
That again, President Trump making his statements on that. And plenty more going on here. I mean, there's a lot of other tidbits I want to get to. There's also some fallout after the fires in California and other fires. People are now suing the energy company. We're going to get into that momentarily. Plus, I want to talk about some political topics as well. But ultimately, there was a very eventful day. And it seems like every day there's an eventful day in Washington. And I think this is partly why Trump's address received a 75% approval rating. I think it's why you've got this Gallup poll that came out showing that there is the lowest trust in the media ever. And again, Jenn Kelly weighed in on that. And a great conversation. Make sure you listen to that conversation on the Gallup poll citing the media and how the media the trust for media, at least, is at an all-time low. And of course, when I make a statement like that, somebody in Radio Land is shaking their head going, this guy Valdez, what a putz. What a putz. Who gave this guy a job? Doesn't he realize he is the media? I am not the media. Very few people are listening to talk radio in general just to get that would say that we're the media, the entirety of the media. Right? I think we make up a part of the media, news, information, entertainment, sure. But when we're talking about the media, and I try to make this distinction all the time, you're talking about the mass media, right? The New York Times, the ABC Corp, NBC, right? All of these large legacy brands that have been controlling truth forever. I don't control truth. I come here and I give you my opinion, and then I let you give your opinion, and we have a dialogue, right? That's not what you see on NBC. That's not what you see on CBS. Now, so yeah, we might be a part of the media, a sliver of the media, even if we reach a lot of people, and we do. But it doesn't compare to all of those people put together, and including Fox, right, and all of that. That this is a larger thing than just the news media either. I'm talking about Hollywood. Hollywood's a big part of the media, entertainment media. So I think that is to make that distinction. Whenever I say the media, there's always a wise guy out there on Twitter saying, "Oh, this guy doesn't know." Yeah, I know exactly what I'm saying. I think you're just misunderstanding me. So anyway, that's what I wanted to say. Now, being clear on that, I want to get into a couple of political topics, and we're going to do that with Susan Crabtree. She's the national political correspondent for RealClearPolitics, and she's scheduled to be with us in just a little bit. Plus, we're going to get to your phone calls. I'm looking forward to chatting with you guys. There's already a few calls online, and we're going to get to you shortly. Virginia, Idaho, Washington, D.C., and a couple of more that are lighting up. So here's the number, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
I want to listen to you, Rich, all the time.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
President Trump is trying to deliver an unprecedented giveaway to his billionaire friends. He's on the hunt to find trillions of dollars to pass along to the wealthiest in America. And to do that, he's going to make you pay in every part of your life. Grocery and home prices are going up, not down, and he hasn't laid out a credible plan to deal with either of those. His tariffs on allies like Canada will raise prices on energy, lumber, and cars, and start a trade war that will hurt manufacturing and farmers. Your premiums and prescriptions will cost more because the math on his proposals doesn't work without going after your health care. Meanwhile, for those keeping score, the national debt is going up, not down. And if he's not careful, he could walk us right into a recession. And one more thing. In order to pay for his plan, he could very well come after your retirement. The Social Security, Medicare, and VA benefits you worked your whole life to earn. The president claims he won't, but Elon Musk just called Social Security the biggest Ponzi scheme of all time.
That, of course, is Senator Lisa Slotkin, who gave the response to President Trump's joint session speech. And the reviews were mixed, right? A lot of people felt that she was measured and calm. Others felt that she was a little bit hyperbolic and off the mark. And that's always going to be the case with any political speech. But I want to get some reaction to that from our guest. She's the national political correspondent for RealClearPolitics. Susan Crabtree, welcome back.
Thanks so much for having me back, Rich.
Oh, it's my pleasure. And tell me your thoughts on Senator Slotkin's response to the president's address.
Well, I think it was sort of the sensible, after what we saw, the display that we saw in the chamber with the disruptions and the sophomoric behavior with the paddles go up and down. And, it just looked like amateur hour. And then you had a very measured, sort of sensible response from Alyssa Slotkin. She's kind of did win a pretty close race, 19,000 votes, in a district, a state that Trump won. But I actually knew the person, her opponent, pretty well, Representative Mike Rogers, who was a former FBI agent and the Intelligence Committee chairman. So no slouch.
Yeah. And she's also an intelligence person, right?
Yeah, she was a CIA analyst, and she worked in the national security community for both President Bush and President Obama. So she likes to talk about her bipartisan bona fides. But, I was sort of impressed because she didn't fall into there's so many pitfalls of providing the response. Everyone remembers, you had Marco Rubio gulping water, and last year you had Katie Britt, whispering, and then she had to retract some of her statements about Biden's immigration policies. And so she didn't fall into that pitfall. She was incredibly sensible. She talked about being a Cold War kid, which I am as well, and that Ronald Reagan would be rolling in his grave about the spectacle in the Oval Office with Zelensky. But what I think she didn't get at was the solutions. Democrats have not been providing the solutions. She was very good to pick apart Donald Trump and Elon Musk, but hey, we're not in the Cold War era anymore. We all lived through the longest war in our nation's history, and it was an extremely deadly war with a lot of American blood and sacrifice, and not to mention the Iraq War, which was a debacle. So we've lived through that. The American people are on a different footing when it comes to intervention, and so we won the Cold War, and it was thanks to Reagan we did. So now we're looking inward more, and we want to solve our own problems. We want to solve the immigration problem. We want to solve the fentanyl problem. We want to solve the homelessness problem. So she did not address that, and she also didn't address, she tacked tariffs, but she didn't say how the Democrats are going to solve inflation, and they haven't. It was a terrible problem during the Obama years. So, the price of eggs was a big topic during the joint address to Congress, but in criticism of Donald Trump. But what is the solution? She didn't offer it. So, while I think she, hits the right notes in terms of no identity politics, and she doesn't subscribe to that, she thinks she should go the way of the dodo bird. But, what are your solutions then?
Folks, we're on with Susan Crabtree. And Susan Crabtree, do you think that Senator Alyssa Slotkin's response, this measured response, is indicative of the future trajectory of the Democrat Party, or is it more in line with Tim Walz and Jasmine Crockett? And is she offering a real change? As you noted, she didn't really provide any solutions. So is this just window dressing?
I do think it's a lot of window dressing. I think it was effective for her campaign in a huge swing state of Michigan. But so it's a good solution if Democrats want to win elections. They had terrible losses last year at almost every level. So you're not going to have suddenly this, people aren't going to consolidate around the Alyssa Slotkin option. She was incredibly vocal and critical of her party after the election. That it's not rocket science. We need to talk about kitchen table issues, even just relating to American people about the price of eggs and the price of bread and milk would be better than what we have been doing, talking about hope and, the Kamala Harris mention of hope and, brat, and it's cool, and let's talk about identity politics. That's not what American people are caring about right now. So there's one thing. So I always describe it as you have to play to the base, which is what the Democrats in the chamber were doing during the address, and then you have to win elections. And they did a lot of playing to their base during the general election, and it didn't work out very well for them. So Alyssa Slotkin is providing a path forward on how to win swing state and swing district elections.
Really well put. Susan Crabtree, I want to continue our conversation. I want to get into a couple of things with respect to California. But before we do you think that this address here was an attempt by the Democrats to kind of redefine themselves, or is this her trying to put herself out there with maybe some presidential aspirations?
Well, I think she's pretty young to be president, but, the field is wide open on the Democratic side. We see Gavin Newsom, just pandering all over the place, trying to reinvent himself. And, he made a big faux pas today, which I'm going to be writing about overnight on the trans issue, at least for his base. But I think that this Alyssa Slotkin got some good reviews. David Axelrod on CNN said he thought what Al Green did with waving the cane and being taken away by the Sergeant of Arms was despicable, and he supports the way of Alyssa Slotkin. So she did impress a lot of people last night, but it's not going to win over, of course, the AOCs of the world. There's going to be a big split in the Democratic Party for the foreseeable future.
A split Democrat Party is a good Democrat Party, in my opinion. the less unity they have, the better. Folks, we're on with Susan Crabtree. She is the national political correspondent for RealClearPolitics. And you can check out all of her articles at RealClearPolitics.com and just search for her name, Susan Crabtree. And, of course, if you missed any portion of this interview with Susan and I, you can definitely check it out at richvaldez.com. Rich Valdez, and that's Valdez with an S. richvaldez.com has every single interview, every single hour, every single minute of this program. You can go back and search by guest and see every topic that we've covered, and they're all available to you absolutely free. You don't even have to subscribe to the podcast. You can just go through it and play it. But if you want, you can also subscribe to the podcast there, or you can stream us live right from the website if you're getting static or somebody's playing a sports game or something like that. Anyway, we're going to continue straight ahead and find out what was this faux pas that Gavin Newsom committed, and more on what's happening with the energy company in California with Susan Crabtree. Don't go anywhere. I'm Rich Valdez.
Mr. Call Screener, who is a budding radio star, by the way. Richie Valdez is terrific.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
LA County, the city of Pasadena, and the city of Sierra Madre all filed lawsuits against SoCal Edison. And these lawsuits, they're pretty similar. They allege the utility company equipment sparked the deadly Eaton fire in January. LA County's complaint includes a lot of photos and screenshots of videos backing their claim. They believe there's enough evidence to support the fire started directly under SoCal Edison transmission lines in Eaton Canyon. And we know all too well the destruction caused by the Eaton fire. It resulted in at least 17 deaths. The flames wiped out more than 9,000 2,000 structures in the 14,000 acres that burned. And these lawsuits are seeking hundreds of millions of dollars to recover from this fire. The money would be used to restore and rebuild public infrastructure. So, for example, in Pasadena, we're talking about police facilities, water storage tanks, and public service buildings. In LA County, we're looking at the McCurdy Nature Center, the historical Davies Building, and the Altadena Senior Center, all of them destroyed. Now, in response to this lawsuit, a statement from a SoCal Edison spokesperson said, quote, "Our hearts are with the communities affected by the wildfires in Southern California. We are reviewing the lawsuits that were recently filed and will address them through the appropriate legal process." And SoCal Edison has said that their investigation into the fire started is still ongoing and could take months. Sophie Flay, ABC 7 Eyewitness News.
So that is a report on what's going on with SoCal Edison in California. And I got to tell you the truth here. I don't understand half of what's going on here. That's why we've got Susan Crabtree with us, national political reporter for RealClearPolitics. Susan, help us make sense of this. What is going on?
Well, it's obvious that if you watch the surveillance video, that the SoCal Edison transmission line was lit up and it was on fire, and that's what started this devastating Eaton inferno. The fire, it remains under investigation, but a lot of authorities are suspecting that the extreme Santa Ana winds drove a live power line close enough to energize a long idle line, and it just blew up. You have a lot of footage of this on X and in surveillance video. It's not rocket science. But this is a problem that's been happening in California for years. What people don't understand is that in California, the utilities are an extension of the Democratic supermajority. They basically line all the candidates' pockets, a lot of charities across the state. If you look at going back to Jerry Brown, his sister sat on the board of Sempra, which is the parent company of SDG&E, a major utility. These are monopolies that exist because the Democratic supermajority allows them to get away with literally murder. The utilities, Gavin Newsom himself and his wife, have taken a total of $700,000 that we can find. My co-author and I looked into this extensively. And part of that money went to Gavin Newsom's wife, Jennifer Siebel Newsom's gender justice documentaries.
Wow.
And guess where they were screened? They were screened, at least one of them was screened at PG&E headquarters in downtown San Francisco.
Wow. This plays out like a spy novel in real life.
It gets better. When you dig into this, you have Willie Brown telling the New York Times that he loves when PG&E calls him because he's on retainer as a consultant, because every time they call, it generates an invoice.
Wow.
Yes.
This sounds like USAID in Ukraine and everything that's going on in Washington happening all in California. This is their typical MO, no?
So California, everyone knows that people are leaving the state in droves because of the policies. What people don't know, and what my co-author and I go into, is that it's because of the corruption as well. It's operating like a third world country, and it's such a big state that the media doesn't do a good enough job. They're aligned with the Democrats to hold them accountable. We have unearthed so many instances of people that Gavin Newsom hired have been sentenced for crimes, corruption crimes, or ethics crimes. It is like at least 25 people my co-author and I have found, not just arrested, sentenced. But when it gets back to the fires, there's a lot of things at play. There's the terrible environmental policies, the CEQA laws, that make it very difficult to have vegetation burns, controlled burns. And there's the problems in LA County that they didn't have the water in the reservoir. That was just incompetence. But guess where that woman who was in charge of that, her name is Quinones, where she worked beforehand.
Oh, that's the water lady, right?
Yeah. the Department of Water and I think it was Fire. She
Yeah,
worked
I remember.
at
She said,
PG&E.
"Oh, I didn't know that we didn't have water pressure. My bad."
She didn't even admit it really in the first press conference. But she worked at PG&E, the biggest utility in California beforehand, and one of the biggest donors to Gavin Newsom. So he is in tight with PG&E. They serve Northern California, about 5 million customers. And yeah, they are even listed on Jennifer Siebel Newsom's, one of her gender justice films, as an associate producer. So
this is a lot of grifting going on.
Absolutely. Gavin Newsom there's these things called behested payments. I know that's not a sexy term, but if you bear with me, behested payments in California, they would be illegal in most states. But in California, Governor Newsom can ask corporations to make donations on his behest. And he has done so for his own wife's documentary nonprofit. So guess who is given to him? PG&E. And then he can direct it to any charity he wants, even in supporting the COVID PCA's public service announcements. Guess who was one of the sponsors of the COVID, wear your mask, even take it off only in between bites during meals? TikTok, we found. TikTok was contributing $300,000 to those public service announcements. These are just some of the tidbits, some of the nuggets that we found in our 2-year investigation. It's kind of unbelievable the way that there's no accountability in California. There are very few news outlets that are really focused on holding Gavin Newsom's feet to the fire. So what we found is just unbelievable. And I will tell you, the utilities, people think, it's energy companies. Donald Trump is pro-energy. In California, the energy companies are very in league with the Democrats. They even hired SoCal Edison, which is being investigated for causing this terrible fire, the Eaton fire. They just hired former Biden Energy Secretary Jennifer Granholm to be on their board in the middle of this scandal. And she had given them $600 million in federal money to update their grid along with other utilities and the Public Utility Commission that is supposed to be regulating them. It's a boondoggle.
It really is. And as you say, it plays out like a surprise. But we know who the Democrats are. We know what they do, and it really, I guess it's disappointing, but it really isn't surprising. Now, Susan Crabtree, I want to get your take on something that Gavin Newsom, since you brought him up, recently said, and you mentioned that he made a faux pas. Well, he was on with Charlie Kirk, and in this interview, he said some interesting things. Listen to this.
It's like you right now should come out and be like, you know what? The young man who's about to win the state championship in the long jump in female sports, that shouldn't happen. You as the governor should step out and say no.
No, and I appreciate
but would you do something like that? Would you say no men in female sports?
Well, I think it's an issue of fairness. I completely agree with you on that. So that's easy to call out, the unfairness of that. There's also a humility and a grace, that these poor people are more likely to commit suicide, have anxiety and depression. And the way that people talk down to vulnerable communities is an issue that I have a hard time with as well. So both things I can hold in my hand.
Both things he can hold in his hand. Do you think this is going to come back to haunt him with the radical left that makes up so much of the Democrat Party in California, Susan Crabtree?
It is already haunting him. The Human Rights Campaign issue, sort of a scathing statement today. I called Equality California, which has received grants from Gavin Newsom. It's the top LGBTQ rights group in California. They did not have a response. I have found, I'll have a story on this tomorrow, that Jennifer Siebel Newsom has not only has gender justice films that she's produced with her nonprofit, taking money from various corporate entities across the state with Business Before the Governor, but she also has partnered with a group that is that was trying to get trans athletes into high school sports to be able to compete against basically biological men who were born as men or boys to be able to compete in girls' sports in high school. So I don't know what his wife thinks about these statements. Haven't seen any clarification. I've talked to his office, and they have basically they're not saying what that means. What his statements do the statements mean that he's outlawing men and women's sports all over throughout the California public schools, including the universities? No, that's not what they said to me. They did not respond to that question to me. He's in a pickle because of this.
Well, we're going to see what happens, and we're going to keep in touch with you so you can keep us up to speed. Folks, Susan Crabtree, national political correspondent for RealClearPolitics. Susan, let everybody know how they can follow you on social media and where to go to keep in touch with all your work.
Well, thank you so much. I'm at Susan Crabtree on X.com. And if you go to RealClearPolitics, you can click on writers, and my name will come up, and you can see all the stories I've done over the last 5 or 6 years. And I love being on your program because you have such thoughtful discussions.
Oh, well, thank you. That's very kind of you. And likewise, you're the best, Susan. We appreciate it. Godspeed to you. And amigos, we're going to get to your calls right now. Open phones across America coming up right now. 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
You are educating the public, and the public is getting good information if they listen to your show.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, America, welcome back. We continue with your thoughts, calls, and reactions to everything that's going on in America at Night. We got calls from North Carolina, Idaho, Washington, D.C. Let's check in with David calling. Hello, David. What's going on in WMAL land?
Hello there, Richie. I'm a fellow Pennsylvanian from Scranton here.
All right.
Listen, I was really impressed with how the president just spanked those Democrats the other night. You know, they were getting hit so hard they couldn't have stood up unless they stood up during the time when they needed to celebrate those folks. But listen, you know, this guy, Representative Green, his situation was pretty mild, you know. I would recommend a book I've read here. It was called, and not only to him, but the other members of Congress, it was called The Field of Blood, Violence in Congress and the Road to the Civil War. It's a wonderful book. These people probably would never survive in that environment today. And I just, you know, it's what's going on right now with the way, to your point, actually, because here in D.C. we're seeing a lot of the action happening to people because they're all federal workers around this place. And, you know, it's like an infection. If you let it fester, it's going to do you harm. If you got to go in, you got to dig it out. Sometimes you got to remove things. But, you know, if it's done right, it'll come out good. And people need to kind of give it just a little time and expect that they're going to see a success here.
Yeah, I think you're right. And, you know, it's always a good point to look back into our history and to see how things were handled. And I probably learned that lesson best working on political campaigns in New Jersey, like statewide and even like local campaigns. And I remember somebody telling me, come on, this is kid stuff. They're like, you had to see what these campaigns in Hobokens were like during the 1960s. You had to bring a baseball bat. And I laughed and I thought to myself, you know, you're right. I think for all the the yammering that the left does regarding the incivility and how we've become so polarized. We're not as polarized as I think we have been at one point. You know, Aaron Burr, right? The dueling, the face-offs that we used to have. So I think you raise a really good point, David. Thank you for your call. I appreciate what you had to say, and I hope you'll call in again. Godspeed to you, sir. WMAL in the building. Let's go to North Carolina, WTKF. Steve, Morehead City, North Carolina. Steve, go right ahead.
Hey, my brother, Valdez with an S.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Yes, I'm long time listener, but I had to finally call.
Oh, thank you for that.
Yes. I love the radio, and I love our local station here. I listen to all the different. I listen to Brian. I listen to Lord. I listen to all of y'all, and all of y'all recently have mentioned something, and it means a whole lot to me because I think this is something so simple. I am a career.
Yeah, it's tough to hear you, Steve. So try to speak loud and clear and get to the point because we're going to run out of time.
I got you. I'm a retired rural mail carrier. Why would we pay people who do not know the neighborhoods they're canvassing and would spend hours doing what we do every single day, and we deliver to every single address in America? So instead of having a perhaps 50%, if you're lucky, true reading, look, I can tell you who lives there, how many live there, and I can tell you the name of their dog.
Right. Because in the rural areas, there's not a lot of you guys, right? You guys work. I've seen it. It's tough, and the mailbox is not even close to the house sometimes.
Right. Well, think about this. Because of the number of people, okay, who is the largest? We are, the United States Postal Service. Think about this.
Mm-hmm.
You've got 700,000 people within just what we call the core United States Postal Service.
Yeah, no, I get what you're saying. You're saying, why spend all this money on the census when you could have the United States Postal Service do it in a couple of days because you're already plugged in, especially in the most rural parts of the country. This is a proposal I hope that they're listening to in Washington. Steve in Morehead City, North Carolina, shout out to you. Shout out to all of our good friends. We got a lot of good friends, even some that are 80 miles north of Morehead City. WTKF in the building. Thank you. And I'm coming right back. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Jerry Smalls is the illest. Let's go to Jerome, Charleston, South Carolina, WTMA. Go for it, brother.
Hey, to Elon Musk, the welfare queen, and Trump and all his sellouts, it's only a matter of time. Today they come for me, tomorrow they'll come for you. It's only a matter of time. 4 years
But
of
bro,
this,
how are they going to come
know.
for
How
me?
you gonna do it?
Right? They're not trying to tax me to death. They're trying to make it better with tax cuts. And I try not to rely on the government for most of what I do. So I think I'm going to be okay. But thank you, Jerome. I appreciate you, brother. Godspeed to you. Amigos, we continue with the conversation straight ahead. More to come. Don't go anywhere. I'm Rich Valdez.
Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, Here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Welcome to the Thursday night edition of the program. We're live, we're national. I am blessed to be here with you all, the American people, hoping to hear from you on open phones across America. And we got this hour, and in many markets, we have another hour after this. So I'm looking forward to that. If you haven't heard Jennifer Kelly talking about the distrust in the media, you don't want to miss that. But right now, I want to talk about some of the things that are going on. Of course, President Trump meeting with the folks that were in D.C. discussing their experience as hostages, the survivors of the hostages, him taking a very tough stance on what happened, what's going to happen with Hamas. You've probably heard about that. I'm just reminding you that that's a big deal and it's still pending there. And there's also rumors and murmurings that Jasmine Crockett might be running on a ticket with a guy I like to call Tiananmen Tim Walz. Tiananmen Tim Walz was out of hiding, and he made a comment. Check this out.
Sir, who do you think the leader of the Democratic Party is right now?
I think the voting public right now is what I would say, and I keep telling that. We're not going to have a charismatic leader ride in.
Hold on a second. If the American public is the leader of the Democrat Party, they voted for Donald Trump. Go ahead.
In here and save us from this. And I would argue that the Tea Party, as it arose out of the ACA, well, where was that charismatic leader? It was John Boehner and Mitch McConnell and a whole bunch of angry folks at town halls that had members of Congress like myself answering questions. So when people are looking around, where's the leaders or whatever, they are going to organically step up. And what I said our job is, of people who do have power to enact things, we damn sure better be doing it. Yeah. And we better be out there standing alongside them.
That is Tim Walz. He started off well, I'd say. I think he's right in that every politician's boss should be the American public. I don't know if they really mean that all the time. It's a tough one because they get caught up in it. They have so much more power than we the people. And then you exercise it when, in fact, it really should be with the people that holds all the strings. So jury's very much out on Tim Walz, and I think we could only count ourselves as lucky and incredibly blessed if Walz and Crockett become a thing, right? And who was it? Somebody, I was on with somebody on TV or somewhere, radio, and they said, I'll write the first check to fund that ticket. I second that motion. Anyway, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent in New York today, he was discussing, what Treasury secretaries discuss, and in particular, tariffs, Canada, and his thoughts on the outgoing Prime Minister of Canada, Justin Trudeau. Check this out.
As President Trump has said many times, tariff is his favorite word. I would say the reciprocal is probably his second favorite word. Mm-hmm. And I think we have to be open to the idea, if you want to be a numbskull like Justin Trudeau and say, oh, we're going to do this, then tariffs are going to go up. But if you want to sit back, have a discussion with the Commerce Department, USTR, they all have my phone number too. I am happy to have a discussion with our foreign counterparts that says that here's what we think you were doing. And the tariffs are the actual easy part. Because we know India does this on U.S. motorcycles. Germany does this or EU does this on American cars. That's a quantitative number.
Yes, it is. And listen, I think this is not, I think a lot of people are misunderstanding what's happening with tariffs. I shouldn't say a lot. I think there are some people misunderstanding it. There's a fire, and we're trying to put the fire out. Sometimes you see a fireman, and he's wielding an axe, and he might have to take down a wall in order to prevent the fire from spreading, or to allow it to spread in a certain area so they can fight this fire better. Trump is our firefighter. That's what's happening here. Now, I've been on the record a million times saying I'm not a huge fan of tariffs. It's not something I do backflips over because I think a lot of people, and we've seen them used in the United States in the past, and there's been instances and certain presidencies where they were used effectively and others where they were not very strategic, and it wasn't good. I think Trump is a master at this thus far. In most cases, every time he's implemented, we're barely seeing the result of it because they work as such a deterrent to bad deals, right? You end up getting a good deal when you put tariffs in the way, and it's been working like a charm. Now, in the case of Mexico, those tariffs are working as well, as intended. You've got Honda saying, you know what, we're leaving Mexico, we're going to Indiana. Why would Honda leave Mexico and come to the United States to build cars? Because they like Americans so much? No, because the tariff that was put on Mexico no longer made it make sense for them. So they said, you know what, let's approach this with goodwill towards the Americans who are buying these cars anyway. And it made sense. It was a good deal. Tariffs working. And I think that's how they're always intended to work. Now, with Canada, they're upset about a lot of things. But as I was mentioning yesterday, it's been a long time that they've been protecting their dairy farmers. And look, everybody should protect their own, right? I get it. But we weren't protecting our own the way they were. The tariff on milk, imagine we send them milk. The tariff was 270%. We don't give them that kind of tariff. And in fact, the tariff that Trump's talking about right now is 10%, right? 10% is a far cry from 270 on American milk. So I think we need to pay attention to what's going on, to listen to what Trump and Secretary Bessent are saying, and realize that the reciprocal tariff is the game changer, right? When he says, oh, you charge us 270, we're going to charge you 270. I think a lot of people are going to say, you know what, I think we'd rather just not have a tariff. Let's have no tariff. Let's have free trade. And free trade sounds really, really good to me. Now, I want to switch gears a little bit. I want to talk to you about a couple of headlines here. In the last day or so, listen to these stories. A couple of headlines. KSAT is reporting that a man was arrested on child sex trafficking. That's San Antonio police. This guy, Matthew Hayes, 44 years old, charged with child sex trafficking. How about this? Richmond man arrested for human trafficking of a child. San Jose Police Department arrested a Richmond resident on commercial sex trafficking charges after he tried to meet with a minor. Ain't that something? CBS News. Man sentenced to 20 years for human trafficking, child exploitation in Colorado. 20 years in jail, right? So you've got Colorado, San Jose, California, San Antonio, Texas. All very distinct parts of the country. Yet everybody's dealing with the same thing. People out there trying to traffic children. This is a huge problem that's only recently been exposed and come to light in the last several years. Now, I know some of you are thinking, no, that's been around. It has been around for a long time. But for a million years, we just thought kids were getting kidnapped. At least I know I did. I know that it was the missing persons, the kids on the back of the milk container, the commercials, right? We for years, it was just called missing persons. Then a couple of years back, it was changed over to missing and exploited children. There's been an effort to suppress the fact that children are being stolen for the purpose of being sex trafficked or labor trafficked. And we have to ask ourselves, why would somebody try to hide this? I can come up with a number of reasons, just thinking quickly. If I'm a politician, I don't want to make it look like that happened on my watch. So then you come up with stories like, oh, they're runaways. Oh, they decided to run away. You know how teenage girls are. They run away. They hate home so much, they want to go get pimped out by somebody. No, that's not the case. These people are being coerced. They're being forced. And this doesn't just happen in America. It happens in Canada. It happens in Mexico. And we're scheduled to have a conversation with a former Royal Canadian Mounted Police officer, a Mountie, who's a trained profiler that has worked on stopping child sex trafficking and identifying these types of offenders that engage in pedophilia and et cetera, et cetera. So I'm looking forward to having a conversation on a lot of things that are happening, because there's a lot of this in the news and a lot more to discuss. So keep it locked right here for that conversation, plus your calls and more. Open phones across America, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Well, Mr. Valdez, you have one of the greatest shows that radio's ever had.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
The North Carolina State Bureau of Investigation says child trafficking is getting worse after seeing the number of incidents go up.
Yeah, investigators say online communication is becoming a more popular way for traffickers to target their victims. They're using outlets like social media and even gaming platforms like Roblox.
And just last week, the SBI was involved in 2 separate Amber Alert investigations for the kidnapping of 2 teenage girls. Both of those girls have been found. They're back home. 4 men are now facing charges. The SBI says in both cases, these men communicated with the girls online.
And officials say it's important for parents to know what their children have access to online. Some tips they shared include having your child's login information for their social media accounts, making their accounts private, and having open communication.
That is a report from WRAL, I believe. And man, this is, again, just another area that is being affected by this. And again, this is not, oh, that's not happening in my neighborhood. No, that's happening in everybody's neighborhood. This stuff is all over the place. And now the State Bureau of Investigations here is giving you a little bit of what happens here. It correlates with internet access. If your kids have access to the internet, it's that much easier for them to eventually be trafficked. And, you know, a while back, we had a former FBI psychologist on the program explaining that on this platform, this gaming platform, Roblox, there could be rooms there that your kids can get into where these pedophiles and other trafficker predators could be hiding out. And this is a scary thing. So I want to get some reaction to this news and have a discussion on this particular topic, a very important topic, with Nadine Ness. Nadine Ness is a retired Royal Canadian Mounted Police officer, a Mountie. She's a trained profiler, and she's the founder and president of Unified Grassroots. Nadine, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, you bet. My pleasure. So, Nadine, I want to talk about this particular story with the State Bureau of Investigations saying it's an undeniable fact that child trafficking is getting worse, in particular because of access to the internet. Where do you weigh in on that?
Yeah, it is going to keep getting worse, not only with the easy access to internet. There's so many things that have made this worse. Not only that, there's a lot more easy accessible to other people like themselves. So not only am I a trained profiler, my training was specifically to child sex offenders. So that's like the legal term that we call them, but pedophiles. And one of the things that when I was trained on this that we talked about is the fact that they can find each other actually increases the rate of offenders around the world because it becomes more normalized within their own groups. And not only that, the easy access to child porn is also creating more offenders in itself. In our training, we kind of were taught on how someone goes from having one thought to actually offending, and it's a long process, and child porn is usually part of that process. And with the incoming of the internet and that becoming so easily available and having so many places to hide it online, we have a lot more offenders now than we did several years ago. And not only that, it's a lot easier for them to hide. It's a lot easier for them to access their victims, and online is one of the greatest ways that they can do that. And unfortunately, while the internet has increased, the education side on how to protect your children online hasn't increased as much. So we're running into a lot of situations where parents didn't think that it would ever happen to them. Like, and I'm going to even share my own personal experience. My own daughter, who's now 15, there was actually a groomer online. And because I had already talked to her and we had open communication, what that would look like, what would be something that she should come to me if it happens, what would it sound like? My daughter right away came to me after she had like maybe 20, 30 minutes conversation with this person. And I just played along to see how far it would go. And sure enough, it was an offender. So like, and it's easy to think it won't happen to you, that your daughter or your son won't be fooled. But unfortunately, they know exactly how to get these children, how to get them manipulated, how to groom them. And they'll teach each other. Offenders will find other offender friends, and they'll teach each other how to do it. And they'll also target children together. So a lot of situations you'll have like an initial groomer and a closer. And especially in the human trafficking rings, usually it's not just one person working on its own. It's an entire team. And they'll find a vulnerable person or a vulnerable account, and they'll all start following them. They'll all start sharing their videos, their photos, and things like that. So, yeah, we live in a different world now than we did 20, 30 years ago. And
Nadine.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to say, are these people, are they, when they do this, are they posing as other kids, or are they just transparent saying, hey, I'm some creepy 40-something-year-old guy?
No, the majority of them are posing as children, are sending photos, or even sometimes videos, AI-generated videos. That's another avenue that's made this even more worse in the last little while, because they will do AI-generated content that looks very real, and they'll send that to the child, so the child's thinking, oh, I'm talking to another kid. I'm talking to someone my age. So especially in the gaming and the social media platform area, there's a lot of opportunity for anonymity for these offenders. So yeah, and with AI, it's gotten even worse. And I don't think the protection has increased with the risk that has happened. Like the legislation is so far behind on that.
Folks, we're on with Nadine Ness. She is a trained profiler, profiling child sex offenders, a former Royal Canadian Mounted Police officer, a Mountie, and she's the founder and president of Unified Grassroots. We're going to learn a little bit more about her story, her experience, and how she handled this situation with her own daughter, plus more about her organization, Unified Grassroots. All of that's coming up when we return with Nadine Ness. Don't go anywhere. Keep it locked right here. I'm Rich Valdez.
Well, thank you, Rich, and thank you for everything. I know you very well, and I listen, but I have a lot of people that listen, and they love your show, and I appreciate it very much.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, welcome back, and we continue our conversation with Nadine Ness. She's retired from the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. She's a Mountie, trained profiler, profiling child sex offenders. And She's also the founder and president of Unified Grassroots. Nadine, how did you end up becoming a Mountie? Was this something that you said one day as a little girl, I can't wait to grow up to be a Mountie, or was it happenstance? How did it work out?
In order for me to explain how I became a Mountie, I have to explain the motivation behind it. So, and I hope it's okay that I talk openly about this. I do publicly. So I was a victim of sexual abuse at a young age, between 8 and 10 years old. And my offender was arrested, went to jail. And so I went through the whole legal process. I was interviewed by a police officer. I still have a vivid memory of being in an interview room with a camera recording me sharing everything that had occurred. And I was one of the lucky ones who was able to get justice in it. And then as I grew up, as I kind of healed through that trauma, I wanted to fight and make sure that this wouldn't be happening to other people. Everything that I could do to stop it from happening to anyone else was my mission. And initially, I didn't think I could be a cop. I was 5'2", like 120 pounds. So I don't really fit the typical cop profile, but I got in, and my whole focus was to eventually work in the ICE unit. And ICE unit is different in Canada. It's the Internet Child Exploitation Unit. So, and that's kind of the only unit that we have that deals specifically with child sexual abuse and human trafficking and all of that. So because of that, I took all the training specifically needed to work in that unit. Unfortunately, I didn't get to fulfill my dream. I ended up leaving the police force due to medical condition that confined me to a wheelchair. So I had to unfortunately stop. I'm cured now, but we didn't know what was causing it. So, but the good thing is it gave me the education, and I'm one of the only cops in Canada that can talk about some of the pedophile activism that's currently occurring today. And I was so thankful. I was able to do a big investigation into third-party organization that was trying to revamp sexual education in Canadian schools, but it was right along with the pedophile activism. And we did a big expose on these organizations. It went massively viral. They all got banned from the schools the following week. So we had massive success in protecting. There was a lot of incidents that occurred that were very horrific, where children were shown these porn cards that I won't even mention what was on it, but even as a profiler of sex offenders, some of these terms I had never heard. They were so outrageous.
Like outrageous. What? Help us understand a little bit.
Well, no, then I would have to say the terms. And I don't think it's appropriate for radio, or is it? Because it's a nighttime radio. But it even talked about I don't even want to say them, but if you can think of the worst, like urinating and defecating on each other in the sexual terms, it was that bad. Anything that kind of involved that. And what happened was that made it the story kind of, there was a big story. So if you look up,
this is what they were trying to teach in school.
Yeah, so this was actually Planned Parenthood. So a lot of people don't know Planned Parenthood is in Canada as well, but they're not the same as the U.S., but they're very much involved with sexual education. But they had other organizations that they were working with, and one of those organizations actually had pedophile logos right on their main website when you just got to the first page. And these logos I was trained to look for in search warrants. And I've done investigation on sexual abuse. I didn't work in the ICE unit, but I was kind of the go-to person in my detachment because I could always get a witness to give a statement. With sexual abuse cases, it's very hard to get good statements from victims. But I was known as one of the ones, ask Nadine, she'll deal with this case. So I dealt with a lot of sexual abuse case, and even one of them was, it almost went to human trafficking. Thankfully, we were able to get the victim back before any sexual abuse occurred. But yeah, there's a lot of information I could share, but we don't have unlimited time. So for your listeners, what I I want to share advice for parents to protect their children, because I think most listeners,
Yes.
they're curious about how they work, but most of them need to know what they can do. One of the biggest events on this is building trust and having open communication with your child. If you don't have a good relationship with your child, they're at greater risk of being influenced. If you can create a safe space for them to feel comfortable talking to you, especially when it comes to cases like this, there's a lot of shame attached to it. So a lot of times children won't come forward. In fact, the majority of cases never get brought to light, especially if it's a male victim. Male victims are the least likely to come forward. And a lot of that is because there's shame. But when you have parents who have an open, trusting, good communication relationship with their child, it's one of the biggest deterrent. Because usually they'll start talking about something that's a little bit odd. Like my daughter, that's something I worked really hard in building with her. So as soon as it happened, she felt comfortable coming to me.
Right.
So, and like in the ad just before I came on, they talked about parental oversight. That's another thing. It doesn't mean you necessarily have to look through it all the time, but if your children know that you can grab their phone at any point in time and look through it, they're less likely to go into the behavior that could get them in trouble. And this would be one of those things. I'm not saying it's necessarily their fault, but just knowing that their parent might monitor it, might look at it. Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Now,
Limiting
Nadine,
exposure too. Yeah,
sure.
sorry,
Well,
go ahead.
we have a caller from Idaho that has a question on how you potentially spot some of this coming. Paul, Boise, Idaho, KBOI, you're on with Nadine Ness. Go right ahead.
Thanks for taking my call, Rich.
Yes, sir.
It's a very touchy and serious topic. I'm curious about how can you identify somebody in your own family that may be doing these things with their grandchildren or their nieces or their nephews? What are some of the things to look for so that you may be able to put a stop to it with the right people doing their job?
Thank you, Paul. Nadine?
Yeah, okay. The biggest advice that I can give you is trust your gut. Most parents at one point in time saw something they knew didn't feel right, but they brushed it off because to address it, for it to be reality, would be so horrendous that it can't possibly be true. It can't, and they will subconsciously do this, and it's not a fault on them. We're designed as a society to coexist and get along with each other, and often we'll completely ignore that gut feeling. So that's the biggest piece of advice I can give. Now, what does it look like? What would be things that would ignite that gut feeling? So it might be as simple as an offender touching your child, just touching them on the shoulder in front of you. Offenders will often try to normalize touching a child in front of their parents, because when it's happened outside of their parents, they're going to be like, oh, this is okay because he did it in front of my parents. So there's like these small little things that they'll do. Or looking at a child with lust. We can always recognize when a man looks at a woman with lust or a woman looks at a man with lust. Offenders will often have the same exact thing with children. I can go and sit at a mall and pick out who I think would potentially be a threat to children just based on the way that they look at children, the way they interact with children.
Wow.
Now, that's what to look
obviously,
like.
if you see somebody looking lustfully at a kid, everybody should say something.
Well, yeah, but we're almost designed to ignore that because we're designed to avoid confrontation. Well, not you. Some of us aren't. I'm not one of those because I recognize it right away, fight or flight. I'm like, I'm going to fight for this kid. and I would say something. But most people, they'll kind of just justify it and pass it off. Oh, maybe I don't want to cause the same. Maybe it wasn't what it looked like. So, but often people will have a gut feeling with some people most of the time. But there are situations too and types of offenders where everyone, when it comes out, they're like, oh, I had no idea. I didn't see it coming at all. It all depends on the type of offender and how great they are at manipulating those around them. So when you're trained to profile sex offenders, they say it's the best profiling training you can get because they're the most manipulative people out there. They've had to fool the whole world around them. They've had to fool themselves. So they are very good. So there are times where nobody will kind of see it, but there will be signs in the children. There'll be signs in depending on the age, it'll all look different. But yeah, I don't know if we have time to get into that.
Yeah, we do. We just got to take a pause right here. Folks, we're coming right back with Nadine Ness. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. Now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
All right, amigos, we continue with former Royal Canadian Mounted Police Officer and child sex offender profiler Nadine Ness. Nadine, you were finishing some thoughts that you had with respect to identifying groomers and taking a course of action thereof.
Yeah, I was switching to what are things to look for in children that are potentially being abused, so you can recognize it and stop it. So I'm going to try to go through it, but give examples as well. So one of the things is sudden behavioral change, especially in the older age kids. So if you have a teenager that all of a sudden completely changes, doesn't want to talk to you, doesn't want to spend time with you, and it happens overnight, that would be a really great cause for having a conversation with your child. Hey, is something happening? You don't seem yourself. One of the other things is fear or avoidance of specific people. If your child doesn't want to hug someone or doesn't want to go to someone's house or freaks out every time it's time to go to daycare, like at an unusual rate. I mean, every child at the beginning, but let's say they've been going to daycare for a while and all of a sudden they don't want to go. That would be something where you could have a conversation with children. Now, it's very important that the conversation or questions you ask children are not leading questions. So a lot of parents don't know this. Like if they ask, did someone touch you inappropriately? That's a leading question. Children are automatically wanting to please parents, so they're more likely to say yes, even if that person is not at all. So never ask leading questions. So if that happens, Google what kind of questions that aren't leading questions. Google it before you start talking to the child. Yeah. Inappropriate sexual knowledge or behavior that doesn't fit their age group. So sometimes you'll have like children that will sexually abuse another child or do action. I mean, they're a child. They can't be held liable if they're under the age of 11. But if you see a child doing something sexually inappropriate and displaying not just sexual touching, but knowledge that's above their age group, or doing very, very explicit, like that a child shouldn't use, that's a huge warning sign. Physical symptom, that's an easy one. If you see something like bruising that's unexplained, especially around the genital area and thighs. Sleep disturbance, this is a big one. Nightmares, even potentially urinating the bed, and that can happen especially if the offender is in the household. So there's things that create risk, but like if there's like a male in the household, a child who's getting sexual abuse might urinate in the bed because they don't want to get up to go to the bathroom, and potentially disturb the offender. Regression in younger behavior, so they start bedwetting, sucking their thumb, clinging to parents, like especially if it's an older child and all of a sudden he's like clinging to the mom like he's a toddler. That would be another example. Depression, self-harm, suicidal things, that's especially in teenage years. So if you have a teenager who's all of a sudden really sad, potentially cutting themselves, that's a huge indication. But again, the conversation is so hard when a child's being sexually abused. They might come to you and say something that's hinting at it that won't be the full truth. I'll give you an example, a personal example for myself. When I first came forward to my parents, there was so much shame attached. I didn't want them to be angry. I didn't want them to know like how bad it was. And I didn't tell my parents the whole thing when I first came out. I just said, hey, he's touching me in ways that I don't like. Can you make sure he's not invited anymore? I don't want to be around him. He just makes me feel ick. And that's all I said. That wasn't the full truth. But I wasn't ready to say the full truth because there's so much shame attached. So if you have like a child that comes to you and say, hey, I don't really want to hang around this person, right away that should be like open for conversation. Okay, what's happened? Like, do you want to tell me? And sometimes you can actually lead with potentially the abuse. What I mean by that is if a child came to me, I don't really want to be around this person. I can say, if something has happened, it's really normal to feel shame. Like if you identify what they could potentially be feeling, they're more apt to open up. And there's more I could talk about, but there's one more thing that I want to say to your listeners.
Sure.
And I almost always say this to victims of sexual abuse. If they're doing it to you, they're going to do it likely to someone else. Every offender that gets caught every offender in their lifetime has around 40 victims. So if it's happened to you, even if you get out of it, if it doesn't come forward to police and it doesn't get dealt with, he's likely going to offend someone else. So I always tell victims, if you don't want to do it for yourself, do it for someone else. But please report it to police. And that's not just the victim. That's like anybody, like a church, like a pastor. If you know this is happening, you have a duty to report it. If you're a parent, you should be reporting it. And I want to say something else.
Sure.
Reporting it and going through the court system can be difficult, but it can also be very healing. For myself, and I've talked to many victims who've never come forward, when they get justice and when it comes out and it's told, yeah, what happened to me is wrong, it does solidify in your mind that what happened to you is not okay. And it actually helps you process the healing. Some people don't. It just stays hidden for generations.
And I guess that brings a lot of trauma, right? It's already trauma, and you kind of perpetuate the trauma. Nadine, we've got to wrap it up here, but I'd like you to give everybody your website and let them know how they can keep in touch with you.
Sure. So we have a nonprofit organization, but I also do a daily live show during the day, so it's no competition to you. And that's called Your Daily Dose. Your Daily Dose of Salt and Light. So if you search my name, Nadine G. Ness, you'll be able to find me. It's Nadine G as in golf, Ness, and I'm on all social media.
Ness. Outstanding. Well, thank you, Nadine. I appreciate it. We're up against a break here, but Godspeed to you. It was a pleasure talking to you. We're definitely going to have you back because we could talk about this, as you can see, at length. Folks, Nadine Ness, we're coming right back.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, so we got John in San Diego, California, streaming the show. Says instead of firing Matt out, we should ban Comcast in red states. That doesn't sound very constitutional to me, banning free speech. But I get your sentiment, brother. Tony in Montreal says Israel should get to set the parameters for peace. I agree. And Forrest in Memphis, I think we're going to have a lot more energy soon. I'm Rich Valdez.